Hey YouTubers, welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, it's going to be a little long, but we're going to talk about Klipper's bed mesh and the importance of how to set up a proper bed mesh just in case you have a warped bed. And we're going to also discuss how to fix a warped bed, little tips and tricks you can use to fix a warped bed. And I will demonstrate that today on my Tronxy X5SA. So stay tuned and I'll see you after the intro. Alright guys, so welcome back. Let's talk about Klipper's bed mesh. Now, Klipper Bed Mesh is really powerful. There's some additional feature you can use beyond just the basic bed mesh. Now, I have a little note with me just to keep track of everything so that way I'm not going off on a tangent, because I tend to repeat myself, go off on a tangent. So I'm just trying to keep track and just keep track of myself and provide this valuable information to you guys. So Klipper Bed Mesh, very powerful tool. I'm gonna open it right now so we can go over it. So typically this is your basic bed mesh you would set in Klipper. This is what you would use. Now you don't have to use a bed mesh if your setup is already your aluminum bed is already straight, especially if you're using a MI6 plate or a ATP5 cast aluminum plate. They're both cast, but I guess different processes why they have the given name, or it could just be different branding. Those are the plate that is recommended because they cast and they hold up a little bit better with heat, and they don't have a lot of warping issues. 6061 aluminum and those type of aluminum tend to have warping, so they're not recommended to use. However, I did use some 6061 aluminum and I can definitely say that they do warp. Now luckily I bought one from Amazon and that didn't warp at all. Like the one from Amazon I bought in a kit and it didn't warp, but the ones that I got from different places did end up warping a little bit. So it's not a big deal. But if I should recommend any type of plate for your bed, I would definitely recommend MI6 and the ATP5, like the Voron community and the designer recommend to use. So yes, if that's generally flat, you really don't need a bed mesh. You just set your Z offset and it should be pretty much good to go. However, if you do have a bed, let's say a Creality style bed, those thin aluminum bed that you get with stock printers, you might have areas of spot of high and low, and a more detailed bed mesh with some more features will kind of help compensate for some of those issues you may have with the first layer. So in that case, if we come down, I'm just gonna go through some important stuff I think you should add to the base. So the base is basically the speed, the horizontal lift of the probing points, the minimum and the maximum of the mesh, and the probe count. Okay, so that's your basic. What we really need to look at, let me scroll down here so we can go much further, is we need to add a couple of things. Like here, the mesh PPS, which stand for let me see if I see it right here, it's somewhere here, mesh points per segment. Okay, this is really good to add to your bed because it does help to emphasize more interpolated points on your bed, and it basically what it does, in between probe points, it calculates the distance between the probe points you set, and it try to mimic the contour of the bed as good as possible with 2 lead screw. Now if you had 4 lead screws, even well, I never seen a 4 lead screw printer, but you know, like belted Z, like the 2.4 or triple Z lead screw setup, those will fare better when it comes to bed leveling, because you have 3 independent screws moving the bed in like 3 independent direction, so you get a better better mesh setup that way, you know, because you have 3 independent lead screws. And that's, so this is a good thing to set. You can increase it as high as you want. It would just make sure, it would just only make the mesh more bigger and more detailed. So I definitely recommend this. I also recommend you use the bicubic algorithm. The default algorithm is Lagrange, and with the Lagrange, it's better when you're using less pro points. So like a 3x3 grid setup, less pro points, Lagrange is the default setup. In this case, I will say use a 5x5. It seems to work really well with odd numbers. At least that's what's recommended anyways. So I would go with a bicubic algorithm. It does interpolation a little bit better, especially when you have more probing points, as you can see, as you read through it. And another really good thing to add to your bed mesh as well is bicubic tension. Bicubic tensioning essentially emphasize more on the interpolation. Basically, you have more Z movements, right? So the more you increase the tension, the more Z movements you have. Now, the problem with that, as it says, the more Z movement you have, you can create overshoots, essentially. So the more the Z is moving, you can have a spot that is high and the nozzle might move way too high. Or if you might have a low spot and the nozzle might move way too low, right? And cause issues. So you don't want the bicubic tension to be too much, because it's going to create a lot more Z movement from what I'm understanding. So, but this is really good to help, again, help the bed mesh, help your nozzle move and your Z stepper in coordination to make sure you get a nice first layer on your bed, especially if it's warped. So there's an image of what's basically happening. You have the blue is your probe points. These are the points that you'll probe. So, and then the kind of purplish is the interpolation point. Okay, these are the point that is interpolated, and it can show you, it says mesh PPS. As you can see, these are the points that are interpolated. So you definitely want this to help the whole bed mesh to work much better than a basic bed mesh. So I definitely recommend that you read through this a little bit more. I'm just giving a brief overview from what I understand to you guys, but it's definitely recommended because it has helped me with my setup. This is also important, move splitting. Move check distance is good, because every 5mm the nozzle move or the head travels, it will do a lookup. Okay, so this is the lookup. It will do like a split delta Z. It will do a lookup of the bed mesh, and so this is the tolerance for that lookup. It's called split delta Z. Essentially, it will look up your bed mesh, and if you set the split delta Z to let as it says default to 0.25, if the bed mesh reaches a spot that is above 0.25, it's gonna split that travel movement. Okay, so it's gonna break it down a little smaller, so it can follow the contour of the bed a little bit better. So these two are very important to do. I reduce mine to 3, so every 3mm is do a lookup, just to kind of help it do a better job of following the contour of the bed. So these are very important. You can read more on them, but that's really good as well. Mesh fade essentially means what it means, mesh fade, you know. So you have the mesh, your nozzle is following the contour of the mesh. So as an example, it will start doing the interpolation at 1mm, and then it will fade out. Okay, it will fade out at 10mm. Okay, and that's really good for it to fade in and fade out, because you don't want it interpolating the whole point, right? You don't want it doing the, you know, let's say you have a tall print, you don't want it moving the Z the whole time throughout a tall print, right? You want it to end at a certain point, because at a certain point the print is pretty much even, you know, around 5-10mm the print is pretty much even at that point, so you don't need interpolation at that point anymore, or the bed mesh anymore. So that's important. And then one more thing, but this is only important for those who are using a probe. This is important for those who are using a Z end stop in conjunction with a probe. Okay. So for example, like the 1.8 and the 2.4 that has a separate Z end stop mechanical switch in conjunction with a regular probe. This is important to have the relative reference index. Okay, if you don't have this on your regular printer like my Tronxy, this is not important to put on your bed mesh. This is just only for those who are using a separate mechanical end stop in a conjunction with the Z probe. Now, what this does, I read about it, but I couldn't understand what it really means. I kind of have a vague idea, but thanks to, after looking it up, Arcscene here really explained what it does much better. So he said the relative reference index is only useful if you're using a separate end stop, not the probe, to own the Z. It allows a user to calibrate their end stop position relative to one of the mesh points. The user can then look up the index for that coordinate in Klipper.log and specify it as a relative reference index. This will offset the mesh to make that Z point, the Z point of that reference, equal to 0. Essentially, if you're only using the probe for sampling the bed, it can help account for probe drift. So essentially, the relative probe index is just a point on your bed, okay? It can be the center sometimes. That's why it's best to use the odd number of probe points. It can be the center of your bed. And essentially, it coordinates. It's a coordination that you can select with the Z. You can select different points, but I recommend the center. So it can be a coordination of the center of the bed, and it's gonna and the Z mechanical end stop is gonna coordinate with our reference point as the 0 point of the bed. Okay, so whatever, you can make it any point on the bed, but you can set it as what I recommend, the center, and set it as the 0 point of the bed. So that will be your reference point of the 0, and then it can base the mesh off that. So that's, from what I'm understanding, that's what it means. So if anybody else understands this a little bit much better, go ahead and drop it down in the comment. I will definitely pin it. But yeah, from what I'm understanding, that's what I get from it. It's basically to help prevent probe drift. If your probe is in a certain spot and it's not getting accurate numbers, that could help to set a reference point to 0, so that way your mesh can be based off that and give you a better offset and follow the contour of the bed a little bit better with those numbers. So now, as far as setting up and giving tricks for the bed, I'm going to show you what you can do with a warp bed. Now, so my Tronxy, I have a 9mm aluminum 6061 bed. Now the problem is it's warped a little bit in the center. So it's, instead of bowing down, it's bowing up a little bit. So the edges are a little bit low. Now, it has a variance based on the bed mesh of between 0.4 and 0.6, which is pretty high. So there's going to be spots on the bed where the nozzle is going to be a little too high, even if you have a bed mesh. So to fix that, I'm going to show you what you do to fix it. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here and demonstrate. Essentially, what I'm going to do is, let me show you guys. Go ahead and kind of grab. So essentially what I'm going to do is take some painter's tape, and because I'm using the magnet setup, my bed actually dropped because it timed out. So let me go ahead and home it again. So essentially, you're gonna take some painter's tape and you're gonna put on the bed in the spots that it says it's low. So I'm gonna show you what my bed look like. I'm gonna do a Z tilt, show you what the bed look like, and then we're gonna start working on trying to fix it and make it look as flat as possible. So this is a trick for a warp bed. If you have a warp bed, you have a magnetic spring steel sheet set up with PEI or whatever, you can use this method to fix the bed, to kind of correct the warping on the bed. So I'm gonna go ahead and do a Z tilt adjust here real quick. So it's doing a little Z tilt real quick. So once it's finished detail and it hits the 0 point, I'm gonna do a quick bed leveling for you so you guys can see what the bed looks like initially, and then we're gonna start putting on some tape based on where the low points or the high points of the bed is, and then we're gonna run another Z-tilt and see if it actually fixes the bed. All right, it's almost there. It's that was his first try. Should hit about 25 now. It's usually really good at hitting the points I set. So after this, it should get and hit that 0.0025. Sorry about that, guys. The family came in. I didn't want him to make a bunch of noise in the background here. So it said my pro points was increasing. You know, you get that from time to time. And let me explain something, guys. With Z-tilt, the reason why I have so much tries is because my tolerance is very low. Look, my tolerance is set at 0.0025. That is really very, I don't want to say low because the number is low, but it's really high tolerance. You're asking the bed to be, you're asking the machine and the gantry in the bed to be as flat as possible, right? It depends on the micron, depends on how accurate the BL touches or the probe. It's gonna struggle to try to get the bed as flat as possible, okay? So that's why I set so much tries, because I've seen it hit a flat bed before. So, but I can reduce the tries. I can make the tries 1 or 2 by reducing the number to 0.01. Okay, at that point, it will just hit that real fast. But the problem is 0.01 might be like this. So let's say my bed is flat like this. 0.01 might be like this, like slightly, ever so slightly tilted. I don't want that. I want it as flat as possible. I want to get it as flat as it can get, and that's why my tolerance is so high. Okay, so that's why I set it that way. So I set 20 retries just in case it can't reach it within that five try window. I set it a little bit higher so it can keep trying before it fails. So as you can see, sometimes it does run into problem trying to hit that window, but hopefully should hit it here. There we go. Now it's moving down. Oh, see, and there we go. We're at a full flat bed. So 6 tries, it did better than what I requested. So I requested, as you can see, I requested my tolerance is 0.0025, okay? But it did better. It gave me a flat, complete flat bed. Now, we're gonna go ahead and do a calibrate so we can see our bed. I mean, you can see my bed right there, but let's do another one as it's flat so we can see what my bed looks like, and then we can go ahead and adjust it from there. And like I said, I'm going to take this moment to kind of talk about this topic of bed mesh. Now, I know I breezed through some of the settings, but I recommend you read them yourself. I'm only presenting the information as I understand it. Now, I might be wrong. I got to admit, I might not explain it the best way, but hopefully that comes across where you guys can understand it just a little bit better. But I do recommend you guys go ahead on that Klipper Bed Mesh page and read it. Just read it yourself, and again, utilize some of that feature of Klipper, because it's a very powerful firmware, you know, and it can definitely fix a bed that is not really badly warped. If it's, you know, mildly warped, it can definitely help fix some of those issues. So I'm not going to try to make this video too long, but I also do want to demonstrate how to fix, you know, how this painter state can help fix a warp bed. So it's going through its It's leveling right now. So as you can see, you see how the numbers change here, guys? You see how you see it from like 1 point something millimeter to 2? That's where you see the change happening. That's when you know my bed is warped. You definitely want your numbers consistent. You want, it should have been either 1 point something all the way or 2 point something all the way. When you see variances like this, where you see where it goes from 222 to like 11 back again, that shows you that there's a warp. You kind of want the number to be very consistent all the way through. So we're going to see what the bed looks like, and then we're going to just go fix where the problem areas is. Alright, so we're going to see what our bed looks like. Alright guys, so now that the bed is done, let's look at it. So this is what the bed looks like. Now that's kind of bad because again, we have a 0.7 variance here. That's not really good. That's like a very bowed bed, right? So now we're going to go ahead, since the middle is bow, I'm not really worried about the middle. Okay, we're worried about the edges. See these edges here? We got to bring that up. All right, we got to bring that up. So when we bring up the edges, the middle will go down a little bit. So let's see if we can get this fixed. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna throw some tape on it, and I'll be right back, and we're gonna see what it looked like. So give me a second, guys. We're gonna see exactly what it looks like. All right, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you. So as you can see on here. You see what the bed look like? We know what we got to focus on. So we're going to focus on this corner here and the back. So we're going to focus on all 4 corners. So I'm going to go ahead, pop off my spring steel sheet here. We're going to go ahead and start adding a little bit of tape. So we know from the images, this corner is pretty bad. So we're just going to go ahead and add some tape throughout the corners. Tear up a little piece of this here. So we know our corners are really bad, so we're just going to go ahead and keep adding some tape in the corners. And we're going to keep adding tape until the bed levels out, until we don't have that bow in the center of the bed. Go ahead and add some in the back here. I apologize for my kids in the background. They don't really listen to me. But we're going to get this done. Alright, so I knew this back, we're gonna put one more down in the back corner right here. Now we're avoiding the middle because the middle is what had the bow. We're focused on the ends. We're focused on the ends. I'm going to put one more piece right here. We're really focused on this corner because this corner was the most problem here. Let me actually rip this in half. This corner was the problem. I don't want to go too crazy, so I'm going to go ahead and look back on that. We had a little corner right here. Okay, so we're going to put back the spring steel sheet down. I will go ahead and run another bed leveling and see what it looked like. See how it changed it. Alright. So let's run another bed leveling real quick and see what happened. Alright, so it's going. Let's see if the numbers change from 1.9 to about, and still if it retains the 1.9, then we're kind of good, because that means we're staying right within level. It's getting close. If it goes back up to 2, that means we still got work to do to bring up back everything. So let's see what happens here. Alright guys, so this is what the bed look like now. Now you can see as it brought down some of that bow. So we still got work to do. So clearly we still got work to do, especially in the front. So what we're gonna do is we're no longer gonna add tape at the back. We're just gonna focus on the tape in the front. So we're gonna go back again, add some more tape in the front, and come back and see exactly what it looked like. So give me a second guys, let me go ahead, add some tape in the front, and we'll see what it looked like. Alright guys, so this is the new bed after I added the extra tape. So as you can see, it's getting a little bit better. As you can see, that warp we had is coming down a little bit. We still have some high spots, these 2 high spots, but we're gonna work on that. Now I'm gonna show you what the if you notice now, everything is in the 2. So you remember we were getting 1 point something earlier. Look, see, everything is now starting to slowly even out. That's what we're looking for. So as you can see, the tape is actually doing its job to even out the bed. So I just wanted to demonstrate this to you guys, that there's ways to fix your bed. Take some painter's tape, put it in the corners that is low or bowing up too much. You know, alright guys, so I ran some more tape underneath my bed, and as you can see, it looks much better now. So as you see, coming from that bow in the beginning, when I showed you what the bed looked like, now it looks a little bit much better. Actually, much better than it was, because it had a massive bow in the middle. So, and if you look at my variances went down from 0.7 to 0.2. And that's just, again, more proof that the tape is working and allowing the bed to try to flatten out as best as I possibly can. So basically, all I'm doing is just kind of watching what the bed look like, watching the areas. For example, I need to put tape here. The blue spots means that you're in the negatives on the Z. So I'm just gonna go ahead and add some tape in this area just to bring up the side of the bed a little bit, and then probably add some more just to kind of match this area of the bed. So I rather all the area looks like this, like look at 0.1, than to have variances like this. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna try to level it out as much as possible. But this is just to show you that there's a little bit of painter's tape, and just, you know, go around the edges, just try to find the spots that are too low, put it there, and just run the bed leveling until you get a decently flat bed and also a better variance. Now, one thing I want to do before I close up this video is I want to show you guys how to add the macros. So with Klipper and Fluid, if you have Fluid, I think Main Cell does it too. Once you put in let me show you. Once you put in these parameters, for example, once you put in the bed mesh, the Z tilt, the bed screws, once you put in stuff like that, Fluid does an awesome job of already picking up that macro. That's why you see these here. These automatically populate once it detects that you have a macro for Z tilt adjust, or screw tilt, or bed tilt, okay, or screw tilt. So once you have any one of these adjustments per se where you're using a probe, it automatically will populate the front with a macro, so you don't have to worry about putting that in. However, so if you wanted to add the macros to a slicer, I'm gonna show you how to do that. So you will just open up Cura or whatever slicer you're using. In this case, it's Cura for me. I go to manage printers, I go to drag this over here, I go to machine settings, and then there's my macros. So you can just put this in. If you're using Pruz slicer on one of them, I'm pretty sure you can use the macros here, or you can put it in the start and end code for your Klipper config. I choose not to do it that way. I rather the slicer do the job of the start and stop. It's just more easier, cleaner than to load up your Klipper config with a bunch of start and end code. which is awesome. You know, it's good that Klipper can do that, but I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just have the slicer do it because it works with pretty much all of the G-code slicer out there. So why not let the slicer do the G-code start and then G-code end stop. Anyways, but that's how you add it. As you can see, I have Z tilt adjust, bed mesh calibrate, bed mesh output, bed mesh profile, and then when the end code would be bed mesh clear because I wanted to do a bed mesh each and every time, a very clean bed mesh just to keep everything consistent. But that's about it. So I add that in, and that's it. So if you wanted to figure out how to add the macros to a slicer, there you go. It's pretty simple. So that's it, guys. The video is long enough. I don't want to go on a tangent, but there's more to come. Subscribe, like, share, just drop a comment. If you have any knowledge about this topic, go ahead and drop a comment. I'll pin it. You know, I think it's awesome to share with the community. So I appreciate you guys. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.